This NBA draft is a weird one. Last year we had 3, maybe 4 prospects that would have been surefire #1 guys in this year's draft. Wemby, Scoot, and Miller easily with Amin in that conversation as well. When you look at this class as it is, there's legitimately 8 to 10 guys that show intrigue in various aspects of their game that puts them in the conversation for #1. But all of them have some holes in their game that makes you question their pedigree as true #1s. One of those players is Zaccharie Risacher, an extremely talented wing out of France that has some real up and down swings playing overseas. His inconsistency has some concern, but many look at the traits he has and think that he has a chance to be the best player in this draft when all things are said and done. So today, we're going to break down his game, look at his pros and cons, and try to predict what his outlook could be in the NBA. So let's get right into it. Okay, so let's start out with one of the major positives in his game and one of the selling points in him being one of the top picks in this year's draft, his shooting. Risacher should be theoretically a major weapon from the beginning as a shooter around the perimeter for whatever team picks him. He's had a lot of success as a shooter in the league that's considered by most to be the second best pro league in the world, and I think that will carry over very well to the NBA. Through 60 games in the EuroLeague, he shot 39% from 3, which, as everyone is well aware, is a good percentage. The percentage isn't the only reason I think the shot is very translatable to the NBA though. I think that his shot form is fantastic. He's got a high release, he's got a super quick release for a bigger player, and he hits shots off of bad passes very often. You can see in some of these clips here that the ball isn't always delivered in his shooting pocket, but he is able to catch it at his feet, at his knees, off center, still line it up and get it off quick and make it, which to me is very impressive. When he first comes into the league, what he'll be doing primarily is a perimeter spot-up shooting threat, I would imagine. And another reason to assume he'll have some early success in this role is the fact that he does come off screens very well. His off-ball movement is really solid, and he knows how to get open without having the ball in his hands. Now on his shot creation, this is a little bit different. It's not great, but it's not horrible either. This is definitely something that he'll need to make a lot of improvement on if he wants to become a star level player in the NBA. He's not an incredibly high level ball handler. He has some moves here or there, but he's much more home roaming like I mentioned in the shooting portion. He's gotten better at it, but I feel his shooting also does become a little bit inconsistent when he isn't catching and shooting. You see when he tries to take shots off the dribble, he doesn't always get it as lined up as he would like, and that leads to a lot more misses than you would want to see for a guy you're taking very highly in the draft. Like I said though, he's not terrible at this. There are some things that really do stand out here, and I do think he's the type of player who can come around as far as shot creation goes. There are flashes that you see from him that really make you think that he's got some potential here as a shot creator. He's made some step backs and pull-ups that are very impressive, and I feel as though that if he can get the consistency up on those things, that'll be a major step towards becoming a true high-level option if he can make that a part of his game. Finishing is another aspect of his game that he has but isn't necessarily exceptional at. He's an underrated athlete, I'll give him that. He doesn't get enough credit for his finishing at the rim. I think he's pretty good at it. It's not a standout aspect of his game, but he can finish at the rim if needed. His athleticism doesn't jump off the screen at you, he isn't extremely bouncy, but he isn't unathletic either. What really helps him when he gets to the rim is his length. His length is pretty solid. He's obviously a big wing, standing at about 6'9". So even though he doesn't jump out of the gym, he has a number of highlights as a finisher of him easily being able to finish over defenders on a dunk, simply due to the combination of his solid athleticism and his good length. What I do want to see him improve on though as he comes into the NBA is his strength, and I think he can easily do that. He is a very young player and he's not incredibly strong. He does okay with contact in the league he's playing in, but in the NBA with better interior defenders, he'll probably need to add a good bit of bulk for him to finish at a more consistent level. A lot like his shot creation though, this is something that I feel he could definitely come along with and get better as the years go on. Now as a playmaker, he's not an exceptional passer. His assist averages are pretty low. He averaged 1 assist a game, indicating he doesn't really prioritize feeding others. That doesn't mean he can't do it, it just means that the role he played overseas is a bit of a play finisher. He wasn't called upon to set up other players all that often, but it is something that he will need to improve at the NBA level. At the very least, I want to see him work on moving the ball within the offense. You don't demand too much out of a player like Risacher, but for him to reach his high-end potential, he's going to have a bit more playmaking in his game. I've seen good flashes from him at times though, so I don't think it's something he can't grow in. Now, defense is really one of his major strengths and one of the main reasons why he can be considered a player with real two-way potential as a 3-and-D player, even very early on in his career. His anticipation really is quite good for a player of his age, and his length is above average as well, allowing him to be really pretty effective in passing lanes and defending over the top. Additionally, I noted that his closeouts are really pretty intelligent. You know, you sometimes see young players jumping to try to block shooters. He doesn't do that. He chops his feet and doesn't fly by guys, which is something that I respect as a defensive trait. I also want to note his mobility. The fact that he has really good lateral quickness gives him the skill set to guard obviously big wings like himself, but also switches on to guards, and he does a really good job usually. His only downside really is going to be his strength and overall size, and now he is switchable on the guards like I said, but I really wouldn't want him switching onto some 4s honestly, and definitely not 5s. He just doesn't have the strength to do that in most cases, and I feel as though if he does get put in a position like that, he could definitely get bodied a bit. That being said, even with his size, one of the positives to his defensive game is his shot blocking. As a wing, he does a pretty good job of blocking shots and contesting shots, and again, that's just a good trait to have and something that should translate pretty well. So for a comparison, everyone wants to just compare these guys to modern players. Like I've heard for Risacher, Michael Porter Jr. or Franz Wagner or something like that. And while these comparisons are fine, I want to go back a little bit further, give a bit of a unique take on it. I think a good comparison for what Risacher's prime could look like is one of someone like Rashard Lewis. Now, for people that don't know Rashard Lewis all that well, Risacher's game actually shows a lot of similarities here with a couple differences, but really Rashard, like Risacher, was a big wing. Rashard was about 6'10" for most of his career, with Risacher still growing. He could get to around that height as well. He's currently 6'9", growing 1 more inch is not unheard of. Both were shooters first and foremost, but had some degree of an ability to rise up off the dribble, and while both were slightly below par athletically, they could both get to the rim. Defensively, I like what Risacher brings just like I liked what Rashard brought. He was over a steal a game guy for most of his career from the small forward, power forward position, and generally held his own defensively. Overall, I can see a similar career path for Risacher. So, in conclusion, some people want to point out Rashard Lewis was fine and all, but Risacher is supposed to be in contention for number 1 overall. I wouldn't take Rashard Lewis number 1. And this is where you need to truly take a step back and receive a dose of realism about this draft. This is not a draft full of extremely high level prospects. The top end guys here, Risacher, Sarr, and so on, would be drafted no earlier than 6 last year. I truly believe that. Now, does that mean that they don't have star potential? Absolutely not. It just means as prospects, we should temper our expectations with this group. If you look 10 years down the line and you got a Rashard Lewis type player in a draft that ended up being terrible, you really can't complain about that. And I do think with Risacher's well-rounded nature, the odds of him being at the very least solid and potentially a borderline all-star level guy are pretty high if he plays his cards right and develops the right way. I don't think he has much of a chance at being a bad player, even if I don't see the ceiling as being there compared to some others. His most major concerns are his low assist numbers and his shot creation, but his passing is coachable and his shot creation could be improved. Overall, he doesn't have a ton of holes in his game. He just doesn't jump off the screen at you either. Overall, he's a very solid player at a lot of things that NBA teams want, and he is the ideal prototype for a 3-and-D wing. So if that's the type of player your team needs, he's definitely not a bad pick in the front end of the lottery. That being said, I don't see him as a huge boom or bust prospect. I see him as a higher floor guy with maybe some degree of a ceiling, but not a superstar type ceiling like a couple of other guys that may have a lower floor than Risacher. And with that, we conclude this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. We should have a number of additional scouting reports coming out here very soon, so if you enjoyed, make sure to give a like and subscribe. But with all that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hey, thanks again for watching this video. If you like what you saw, go ahead and click on one of these videos here to see more.